Hi, Grandma here reading from Crispin, The Cross of Lead by Avi. and we're beginning with chapter 31. Prior to this, we have learned that Crispin is being hunted down for murder as well. Not just the theft of items from the manor house, but for murdering Father Quinnell. Murder is obviously a very serious offense, but murdering a priest is just horrible. It is just, he could not only be shot and killed, he could be dismembered and burned at the stake. A horrible, horrible death. We also found out that the man who was on horseback that met with Aylward is a courier from Lord Furnival. His name is Dubray. That afternoon when we left the town, Bear told me to play, so it was that we departed the village as we entered. I playing music while Bear danced. This time we were followed by a host of gleeful children. Gradually the children abandoned us. It was only when we were entirely alone that Bear ended his dancing. Then I stopped my playing too. "Did you hear?" I blurted out right away. "They're accusing me of murdering Father Quinnell." "Oh, I heard." "That priest also said Lord Furnival was their master. How can that be?" "Oh, these lords of the realm own more land than God himself. Now we need to hurry." "But when the priest named the courier that had come to them, I recognized the name." "Did you?" "It was the man my village's steward, John Aycliffe, met in the woods. Father Quinnell spoke his name, and that young one-eyed man you teased, the one who grew angry, I've been trying to notice things, he was paying close attention to me." Bear shrugged. "We're strangers, for some strangers are a threat, and they look at us accordingly. Pay it no mind." "But you told them we were going to Great Wexly." "Ooh, a small slip." "Bear, what?" "You also called me your son." "Ah, Crispin, you could do worse, far worse." Usually such a remark came with a laugh, but this time he was very serious. "How did I do?" I said. "Very well." My heart swelled. "Shouldn't we be worried?" "Crispin, there's an old soldier saying, if you have to choose between alertness and worry, being alert will bring you more days of life. Now, even more important, let's see what we have earned." I had completely forgotten about that. Kneeling on the ground, Bear emptied his sack. We had earned 4 silver pennies, 4 farthings, and 6 loaves of bread. "That's so much," I said. "Oh, I'm not so impressed," she said. "But consider, Crispin, it belongs to no one else but ourselves. Honest pay for honest work. And you deserve some too." He offered me a penny. "But I'm your manservant," I said. "Ah, but you have earned it," he said, folding my fingers over the coin, "and we're free men." I looked at the coin as it lay in my palm. "Are you sure? Did you work hard?" "Oh, I tried." "Then you deserve it. Now come, we need to earn some more." We started off again, my thoughts enraptured by the notion that we were indeed free. Then when I reminded myself that I was still a wolf's head and pursued, the luster of the moment dimmed. Chapter 32. Over the next 20 days, we sometimes followed roads, sometimes only paths. Now and again we made our way through open fields and woods. Bear did not wish to go in any straightforward way. During that time we performed in many villages. Each performance was much like the first, though Bear said I grew better, even suggesting I might have skills. He continued to teach me more melodies, and once I juggled while he played. What's more, our pennies mounted. Never had I felt so free. Never had I felt such constant joy. Then one morning Bear said, Crispin, what do you know of arms? He question startled me. What do you mean? Weapons, the sword, the dagger, the bow. Well, nothing. It's time you learned. But why? I said. Well, since you're still a wolf's head, you might as well have some fangs. It would prove necessary. It was hard to know what upset me more, the weapon, the handling of it, the idea that I might need it, or that I was in such danger that I had no choice but to use it. But I did practice. At another time when we were before our evening fire, he set about using needle and thread to mend the holes in his leggings. When he'd done, I asked if I could do as much, and would he teach me how? This he did, with much laughter on his part and frustration on mine. Once I asked him how he had learned to speak so boldly, not merely to strangers, but even to those above his station. Oh, it's all in the eyes, he said. What do you mean? In faith, Crispin, you have a servile look. When you first came upon me, you kept your eyes upon the ground, as if that was where you belonged. Where should I look? I've heard it said that a man's soul may be observed behind the eyes. Is that true? Perhaps, but all I know is that when I look upon a man, if he refuses to look at me, I can't see his soul. I'll consider him without and act accordingly. Therefore, you need to let people see what lies within you. I don't know if I can. You doubted you could make music, too. Then from now, when I speak to you, I said, call eyes if I'm looking down. He laughed loudly, I promise. And so he did. Then there was the day when I asked him to teach me how to make the snares he used to catch rabbits and birds. Do I not catch enough? He asked. The only reason you caught me in the abandoned village, I said, was because I had no food. What if I'm alone again? He looked at me curiously. You're right, he said with a rueful smile, and commenced to teach me that as well. At 2 places where we performed, we learned more of the search for me. Though we discovered nothing new, it meant they were still looking. One night, just before he lay back to sleep, Bear said, Crispin, tomorrow we'll enter Great Wexly. What will happen? I said. Only God in his heaven knows, he replied. But, he added, if you pray tonight, Crispin, pray that the devil does not know first. That put me in mind of the images of the demons in the church at Lodgecott. Bear, I asked, what do you think the devil looks like? Oh, I suppose the devil has many faces as there are sins. At the moment, however, I think of him as Lord Furnival. Why him? So much of the land we pass through and the misery belongs to him. He treats his people badly. Bear, you won't betray me, will you? He gave me an angry look. How can you even ask? Oh, forgive me, I said, but it has happened. And do you think I will? I don't want it. Frowning, he considered me for a while. Crispin, he said, you must know I care for you. Perhaps you remind me of what I once was, and as the devil knows all too well, liking goes many leagues with me. True, you're ignorant as a turnip, or perhaps a cabbage, but you've a heart of oak, small acorn though you are. What say you to becoming my apprentice? I'll teach you much as I know, the juggling, singing, dance, the music making. I'll be your teacher, not your master. Would you care for that? Very much, I said, barely able to speak. He extended his great hand to me. I grasped it. Then it is done, he said. You are henceforth my true apprentice. Then he lay down and went to sleep. I could not. Though I was excited by Bear's promise, I was very nervous. Should I or should I not trust him? I fumbled for my cross and was about to pray for guidance, but found myself pausing. I had already asked God for much, and he had given in abundance. Perhaps it was time for me to make the decision for myself. With that thought, I put the cross away and took a deep breath. I would trust Bear. The decision would be mine and mine alone. But I would stay alert for all that might yet come. That decision made, I lay down and stared at the stars until I fell asleep. Chapter 33. We set out early the next day beneath gray skies and scudding clouds. The road was muddy, the air moist and cloying. I was very anxious. Though Bear tried to wear his customary cheerful face, I sensed there was unease on his part too. Of this, however, he gave no voice. At first we traveled, as we usually did, alone. By midday, however, people began to join us on the narrow road. As we drew closer to Great Wexly, their numbers increased. To see so many added to my disquiet. Bear, who had come to know my humors well, worked hard to calm me. "Oh, you don't have to worry," he said. "You'll be safe. In the name of Jesus, I'll see to that." As the road began to widen, it became more and more crowded. Knowing how ignorant I was of everything, Bear tried to explain some of what we passed. "That one is a pilgrim," he said, pointing to a man, walking very slowly, his head down. "Notice his gray robes as well as the heavy metal cross around his neck. With his hood up and eyes cast upon the ground, he's surely reflecting on his many sins. From the look of it, he'll probably need to go all the way to Avignon to see the Pope in his French palace, or perhaps go as far as Jerusalem." A closed wagon came by, its wheels rimmed with iron, something I'd never seen before and marveled at. Pulled by large horses, it was surrounded by a group of men armed with glaives. Now remember, those are poles with blades on the end. The wagon, Bear assured me, contained some rich lady in search of a wayward husband. "How do you know?" "Oh, I'm only guessing." "Could it be a rich man?" "Oh, it could be," he said with a laugh, "and he's looking for a wayward wife." There were many peasants with baskets and sacks upon their backs. One woman I saw bore 2 buckets, each one dangling from a shaft, the shaft balanced on her shoulders. Some folks walked beside their wagon, others pulled them. Children were equally engaged. Bear pointed out London, Flemish, and Italian merchants, identifying them by their particular garb or badges. There were also a great variety of priests, nuns, and monks. One monk wore the black robes of the Benedictine order. A Dominican, they preached well, was in white. Still another was in a rough brown robe and sandaled feet. "He's a begging friar of the Franciscan rule," Bear said. "They take their sacred vows of poverty to heart. May God always look kindly on him and his kind." He made me give the friar a penny. Some officials were, he said, from the county. 1 or 2 on horseback he claimed had come from the royal court in Westminster, close to London. "Have you been there?" I asked. "Oh, I have," he said, as if it were a common thing. There were tradesmen, traders, tinkers, masons, carpenters, hauling goods of one kind or another. Bear indicated a doctor, a lawyer, and an apothecary. One man astride a great horse was, he said, a tax collector. He was closely guarded by armed men. Just to see him made Bear irate. By the roadside were scores of people crying goods for sale or trade. Their offerings were laid out in stalls. low tables on pieces of cloth, even on the ground. For the most part, they were dressed more poorly than others I had seen. Once a troop of helmeted soldiers passed us by. They were chanting raucously, pushing people aside as they came. In their hands were long yew bows. Quivers of arrows were on their back. Aside from the sheer numbers of people, what struck me most were the many ways people dressed, along with the great variety of colors to their clothing, colors I had never seen before, nor could even name. It was as if rainbows had come to earth, draped themselves on the folk, and paraded along the road. I soon realized it was not just words I had learned to read, but what people wore as well. "The town will be crowded," Bear said. "You'll see people from great distances." He seemed pleased. Though all but overwhelmed by what I saw, I was fascinated. To be sure, I stayed close to Bear as he strode forward with his great swagger. When people saw him coming, they hastily stepped aside, gazing at him in awe once he went by. It made me feel proud and safe. But now the market town of Great Wexly loomed before us as if it had sprung from the ground. Its brown stone walls were immense, stretching away far as I could see. "Where do these walls go?" I asked, for I had never seen anything so vast. "Oh, they surround the town in a great circle," Bear said. "Why a circle?" "To keep all the enemies out." Then after a pause he added, "and in." Above the walls I observed spires, some with crosses from which hung a host of multicolored pennants, tossed and turned by breezes. It may seem odd, but it made me think the town had long hair, and each strand, blown by wind, was yet another color. I saw many housetops too. It all seemed immeasurable. By now the people upon the road had swollen to such great numbers the press became intense. A constant clamor filled the air. I kept turning about, trying to see and hear the all of it, asking Bear what this or that might be. But he, no longer of a mind to answer my endless questions, strode on silently. I found myself reaching out to touch him, lest I fall behind. As we drew closer to the walls, people began to squeeze together tightly. I wondered why, until I saw the town's entryway before us. Built into the great wall, it was a deep tunnel that revealed just how thick the walls were. "The Bishop's Gate," Bear said. This entry consisted of two massive black wooden doors, each one studded with iron bolts. The doors had been swung open and pushed back against the walls. Behind them, a portcullis had been raised halfway up, looking like teeth prepared to bite. Now remember, you've got that glossary in the back of the book, but that is it's like a wall that comes down, and it has spikes on it that stick in the ground, and it you can see through portions of it. So you've got that coming down, and then you have these giant doors closing around them as a part of their defense. Above the entryway was a design with markings on it that looked like a shield. Black cloth was wrapped around it. Bear was gazing at it intently, but when I started to ask him what it meant, I realized he'd shifted his gaze to the gate. I followed his look. Soldiers, their chests covered with iron plates, were guarding the entryway. Pointed metal helmets were on their heads. Tall glaives were in their hands, swords at their sides, daggers on their hips. Atop the walls were other guards. What's more, the soldiers were allowing only a few people in at a time. Remembering the men at the bridge, I grew alarmed. I think, I whispered, my mouth dry, they're looking for someone. Okay, that's the end of chapter 33. We're going to stop there. That has been certainly a colorful movie I hope you were making in your head as he was walking toward Great Wexly, of all the people and the different kinds of monks and the people on horses, people walking, people who were poor, people wearing lots of colors, people that they could identify were from Fleming, and other people that might have been from London, just by the clothes that they wore. Hope you enjoyed that. See you later.